memory, executive functioning, sensory integration. If they've missed out on vocabulary for whatever reason, right? Or they're trying to learn vocabulary in a second country. If phonics get past them. And here in our, well, in Conroe ISD, and generally I think it is for the state of Texas, if the kids miss phonics in kinder, assuming first and a snippet of second grade, if they miss the phonetic awareness that's taught there, then boom, you guys are gone. The pack's gone on. And so they'll be in a trying to catch up phase, and they won't have tools. They'll just start to drop off the edges, right? So how can we help our kids with joint attention? Behavior choices will show up here too, because if they're trying to escape how bad they feel about themselves because they know they cannot read like everybody else. Hey, everybody else is reading. How come I can't read, right? They'll depending on if they're sensory averse or sensory seeking, then they will start to have behaviors to escape. That'll affect all the other learners. So distractions in the classroom, right? How can we help them to become more at peace in their own skin? To use intrinsic motivation, right? Intrinsic is not what comes from a bribery. Intrinsic comes from their inside. Working with explicit instruction, and we'll talk specifically more about that. Then the brain will file verbal and written communication in different parts of the brain. Receptive expressive language, you're probably familiar with that, right? And so in a nutshell, receptive, I catch your words, I got your words, teacher, got them. Now you want me to auditory process, okay? You want me to think about what you just said. Now you want an expressive language sentence back, unless we're gonna do alternate assessment somehow, right? So we're gonna talk about neural pathways. We're gonna talk about word building, word decoding. We do have to touch on dysgraphia, and my kids got dyscalculia too, so it's when the brain's wired differently, baby, it's wired differently. And then we're even talking about penmanship, which may have been more important earlier, less now and into the future with the keyboards, but it all still affects fine motor integration. Okay. Now, anytime, since it's just you and me here so far, if you want to stop me anytime, that's fine. The only problem is the clock doesn't. So, but I'll be glad to answer your questions.
But I do have a question. How does this work? This is my first session that I'm attending with New Caney in terms of, you know, their virtual conference. So I don't know, right now it's me and you. Do more participants eventually lag on? Is this one-on-one? Like, how does this work?
Well, so far, you're the first person here, and then Debbie Smith would check in like she did first session, and others may join. I'm just glad one person's here because that means the system's working.
I see someone else also logged in. Did you
and
see that?
I don't see them yet, but I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I can just ask you a question just whenever I need to.
If you want to, yeah, that's great. If we don't cover all the slides, they're in the Dropbox. I put extra in the appendix anyway. I also have a website, and I do podcasts, and I have ebooks and blogs, and so the website there would have everything that we don't get to today.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So how does this terrible thing happen about the kids missing out on phonetic awareness? So if they have tried to draw, what do holes in their learning look like, right? So you're familiar with scaffolding. Well, what if, for whatever reason, whatever traumatic thing happened, the kids don't have all of their learning matrixed in, scaffolded in the way that they need to a really firm foundation. Sometimes that comes from that flashcard, the seduction of flashcards, right? Pullouts. Going to slow things down. My kid gets pulled out for whatever reason. The curriculum keeps on going, and the neurotypical peers keep on going. So he's going to miss out on vocabulary. He's going to miss out on how it all fits together. He's going to miss out on a number of things. So as the peers move on, and so you're going to be helping kids with learning differences. I just know it. There's no way to avoid it. 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6 kids, right? And as the peers move on, then the kids are going to be left in the grass. on the
Right.
side, and they're going to be continuing to miss vocabulary. If they have a diagnosis, I put down PDD-NOS, right? Because that's what they used to call my kids, which means pervasive. Not only do we have developmental delay in all ways, but it's wide and it's deep. So
Right.
kids will have a diagnosis too. Just a bit on neural pathways. I fill this with lots of links for further information. So when you are suffering from insomnia and you need something else to do, you can capture more information there. I do want to draw your attention down that little inset box for neurotransmitters. I'm going to be talking about them in neural pathways. So that's a blow up there. What it is, it's a lot of line segments with a little gap in between them. And so they have to have neurotransmitters to jump that gap to get to the next line segment. And if the kids miss out on that, that's a methylation issue, and that's an immune system issue, and that's a global kid wiring. And we'll talk about that some too, but that's when we say neurotransmitters, right? It gets into more than you have control over in your classroom. It gets into how the child's being raised. So if we ever needed to come and talk to parents, or you wanted to share this with your parents, that's always fine. The intellectual property is you just share it to parents all day long. I also freely give my parent presentations to help within the art, building a positive art experience. I give those freely away to parents too. So that's at the website, and I'll be, I would help parents in a deep and wide way. Okay, so let's get some, you may know this, and that would be great. So first, in understanding phonetic awareness, so phonemes and graphenes, are you familiar with those?
Yes, but it's been a while.
Okay, so yeah, so phoneme, these are the smallest building blocks. Phoneme is the smallest sound, right? And grapheme is the smallest thing you write. So let's say the letter M, M. So 2 phonemes, 1 grapheme. Shh. 1 phoneme, shh. 2 graphemes, SH.
Okay.
So we got to help them master the building blocks to build the words. We have to help them master the phonemes and the graphemes.
Yes.
Then, now we want them to keep them in their memory. Now we want them to work on retaining in their working memory. And in this day and age of digital everything, we're bleeding out. We're killing off people's extended retention, right? And the longer attention span. We're physically rewiring the brains in different ways. But just a quick understanding of the working memory. So long-term storage, lots of file cabinets. The movie Inside Out showed that, right? Lots of ways the data can be stored. And then they're connected by dendrites.
Right.
When you have working memory, we're thinking more like a little kitchen table. And here's 2 + 2 = 4. We're working on this this small teachable moment here. And the time we're done with 2 + 2 = 4, and we're ready to go on to 2 + 3, then the learner will have a chance to say, okay, I'm going to clean off the table. We're moving on to something else. Let's see, I like that memory. That was a good one. I'm going to stick that in the file cabinet. I'm going to stick some dendrites there. So when I need to go find 2 + 2 = 4, I know where to look, right? An alternative would be they clean it off and they say, boy, I felt miserable about myself. I hated that experience. I never want to think about 2 + 2 = again. You know where they're going to put it? Flush. So every time there's a working memory issue, each learner has an opportunity to store and refine, or goodbye, I don't want to remember that again. So think of it also as, so here's your working memory in the classroom, right? And so you have a complex thought that you tell the children, and it's maybe a 2 or 3 part instruction. And so the part of the instruction, if they have some shortfalls in their working memory, what's the only thing they're going to remember? The last thing that crossed the table. And then now the rest of the caboose on the train of the thought that you just said, that multiple section, multiple part instruction. So because the working memory table isn't big enough, it's not wide enough of a plateau, that whatever you said first lost. And so if you ever wondered, why does the kid answer, if they don't know what to say, they'll just answer the very last thing? It's because that's all their working memory hung on to when the thought went across their table, and the rest of it's gone. So we can work through that, but it takes effort. It's not, if the kid has these issues, if the neural wiring is such that they're in their present state, we can help them, but it's bit by bit, poquito, poquito, poquito. It's not, it's complex, more complex than we thought, right? And it's not because they're stupid, it's neural wiring. Right, so we want them to use the building blocks. We want them to, oh, hey, Betty, you better remember what I just told you. And now on top of that, now I want you to retell me the story. I want you to build that vocabulary. I want you to interpret, what did I just say? That whole choo-choo train of that long, complex story that you just read that now has fallen off the working memory table and it's long gone. So that's why you go back and you look for context clues, right? Now we want them to retell the story. And this particular thing is the fourth characteristic of a dyslexic, of a child that's working with dyslexia, is if my child cannot retell the story, okay, so he can't. And that's what we're working on. Executive functioning, have you heard that?
Yes.
Okay, so executive functioning, according to the dictionary, is your ability to manage yourself and all your resources. So we're both here in this Zoom room, right? So awesome. Our executive functioning to get to this place worked today because we made it. We're here. You probably have kids in your flock that man, they can't get their backpack to hook, right? Or they can't find where their pencil went. And so these are all tiny pieces, but they still fit into that executive functioning of them being able to get into the place of learning, to be ready for joint attention, but they're not. It's dribbled out behind them. And we got to work on that executive functioning for them. That's mental control, self-regulation, self-control, a fancy word, metacognition. I'm thinking about my thinking. I do a little frog thing. You'll see a picture there. So it's like our kids, meta, me, cognition, I'm thinking about my thinking. Can our kids rise to the self-awareness to be able to be aware of what they're thinking and doing? And that's all higher levels of executive functioning. Okay. So anyway, that's what we're hoping for, right? To build that model for the kids. That's going to help them a long way toward phonetic awareness and retelling the story. A tiny bit about sensory integration and how these precursors for learning have to be there in place. You start with the child in the cradle, you add a visual as a minor, and then as time goes by, the visual system now is strengthened, so it's able to, the kids out playing, by now the kids playing baseball, they see the ball coming at them, oh, I see it first, I'll move toward the ball. So the visual system has strengthened, so it's not like they just stand there and the bump gets hit on the head by the ball. They see it, they move toward it. And then with the idea that as they integrate all their sensory and motor function, they get to the point of being able to sit down and academically focus, joint attention on what you guys are talking about together. If they're lucky. And if they're not, then that's another whole world of reflex integration. But so the idea there is we have neural pathways, and the bottom section that you see here is let's say two different ways you could look at it. You could be a baby that's learning how to try different ways to stand up, pull themselves up, fall down, try a different way to fall down. And so trial and error down here. But what if, and then eventually it integrates to the top part of the picture, right? So you have a more predictable neural pathway. It's pruned at that preschool and then at that teenage level. Or by practice, we do that over and over and over. And so now we start to have mastery. That top part is mastery. Bottom part is experiment. New stuff. Oh man, I got to work through this new stuff. I got to winnow it down so I can have mastery, like that top part of the slide. But what if for some of our learners, that unpredictability part never reached mastery? It never pruned down. And so you might have 37 variations of how a kid might walk down a hallway or might attend to the word attend, because they don't have the predictability of the neural pathway, right?
Right.
Right, okay. So let's talk about why some of those things happen. We're going to talk about the brain here for just a little bit. So I've made this model, the yellow one with the sensory integration, and that just is a fancy set of words to say the brain receives data through 9 doorways. The 5 doorways that everybody knows about, right? The 5 senses. Then we're going to add, then we've added 3 more plus the newest one. So we have sight, sound, taste, smell, and touch. Everybody knows those. That is how, you know. Then we added in tactile. That's tactile. It's touching me. It's not I touch the screen or the pencil. It's tactile, my tags, or he's touching me. It's like, no, I don't want that, right? Tactile. That is a sense. One of the pipes that bring data into the brain. Body position. That is proprioceptive. Body position is where my body is in space. If I'm not a grounded child, I'm going to stomp down the hallway. I'm going to hang on to the walls. I'm going to touch other people because I'm still trying to ground myself on where my body is in 3-dimensional space. I'm just not exactly sure. With my kid, he couldn't do this. He could not do a 2-footed jump. And that was stalling out his motor planning going from gross motor to fine motor. Because I guess he just wasn't quite sure where the ground would go if he lifted both feet off the ground at the same time. So proprioceptive. Now, the blue one is balance, so that's vestibular. If you ever see a child that goes up and down the stairways, it's like grandma and grandpa, 1 step at a time, you know? Or they just have to constantly, anyway, issues of balance, which fits in right into close to the brain, and it's just so close right there. Introception. Introception.
I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
This is all just so interesting. When did these 4 additional sensory items come out? This is the first time.
Before I was aware, so I don't know.
Oh.
But I do know when the green one kicked in, because that's only been a year and a half.
Oh, this is all new. This is awesome.
And so the idea, and this is OT stuff, you know, and they'll talk about far senses and near senses, but this will get you a long way toward understanding what they're talking about. And it's the only way data comes into your learners' brains. So that's all sensory integration is you're integrating the senses and into learning. And if we had more than 45 minutes, we could spend 2 hours just on that. Introception, back to the green oval there, is the latest one. It's kind of like mindfulness. It's when the child's, the learners, yours, mine, the senses, the emotions, understand the feelings, understand what's going on in the body, and you can start to self-regulate better, and you can feel that antecedent coming, or you can say, oh, I'm starting to feel bad. I need to breathe. Or whatever it is to help that child self-calm. That's what introception is, body awareness, what's going on in all of this. Very much mindfulness, all right? So the brain there you see, and the spinal column, that's your central nervous system. And once the kiddo gets to be about, well, before they get to you guys, that data is going 250 miles an hour. If it's properly integrated, and if it's properly getting to the right place at the right time for synchronization. And so that can awesome be why our kids don't learn appropriately, or they're lagging, or they behave inappropriately, or they're lagging. Not only is it developmental delay of the body, but if the data transfer isn't getting to the place at the right time so they can answer your question the way you expect, then, okay, there's going to be consequences for that, right? Unless we understand that it's not their doing, it's just we got a poor traffic system going on. How do we fix that traffic system? And that gets into methylation and neural pathways, which we're going to keep on going. Now, sensory seeking, sensory averse. Do you have kids in your classroom both ways?
Yes.
Yes.
What do you mean both ways?
Yes. Well, so if a sensory seeking child is going to be that kid that's going to be grabbing on to everybody, because their need for data is greater than what they're getting. So if they're grabbing stuff, then they just need to feel more grounded, or they need that sometimes when kids toe walk, or they just need more information, right? And then sensory avoidance, it'll be that kid that'll be sitting way back out as far as he can get. Don't call on me, please. He'll be, he, she, they will be avoiding things, sensory averse. So that kid that won't get in the jumpy castle, right? Or that kid that won't go into the birthday party, or that kid that is afraid of things and just wants to sit over in the corner. So what we have there is a different version of that model of the sensory integration. One's getting too much data too fast, too hot, I can't stand it, I gotta step back, I'm averse. Or the other one isn't getting enough information, or the brain is hungry, feed me, see more, I need more data. So they're gonna be the sensory seeking one. I just can't get enough information, right? Right. Now, you will also have kids that are both, they'll flip back and forth. My kid, it started off this way, and now he's more this way, but sometimes he's back this way. So here you see my son, John. That's Galveston, nasty old bay water. And he's sitting in the dark, sensory seeking. Hey, I'm fine. I'm sitting in the water, you know? And then, but it's the same kid that I have to like grab, and I'm going to make you eat this ice cream cone if it's the last thing I do. So I'm shoving it. You can see there, he's just, that ice cream cone is too scary to chew on. So this is where it can be harder in the classroom. If you've got a kid that is not predictable, you expect them to be this way, and all of a sudden their reflexes or it's a fight, flight, fight, and flee, and all that free stuff. All of a sudden they flip to be, that's behavior. We're going to talk about that soon later on another time slot. But if they're all of a sudden they act like a different kid, it's just that they are sensory seeking, sensory averse, and they just flipped. Okay, so back a tiny bit more. So here's a wonderful YouTube on auditory processing and auditory transduction. You click on that YouTube there with the ear, and it'll take you to a beautiful 8 minutes of how all this is supposed to work, just in the sense of the ears, of hearing into learning. Then as far as some of the feelings and tasting and mouth and tactile stuff, over on the left, we've got some links to the trigeminal nerve. So 1, 2, 3, Gemini, left and right. And so any kid that's got issues with, don't touch my hair, I don't want to brush my teeth, problems with oral motor, you've got a massive communication freeway system from the shoulders on up. All of it, you got the trigeminal, you've got the central processing, the brainstem, you got all kinds of data flowing here. And if this is all messed up and not at peace in their own skin, you're going to know it in the classroom.
Right.
Okay, so we've also talked about that continuum of motor function. So first, motor is going to be more the legs, right? That's PT kind of stuff. Moving then eventually into fine motor, which will be more like OT stuff, right? And then oral motor, we would want for great expressive speech. But if the kid gets gummed up in the learning process, isn't fully integrated, and it's not a fine line, they're kind of, commingled there for a while. So we started off with gross motor, right? And then the baby gets up and starts walking around and pulling himself up, and pretty soon, he's using his hands to feed himself or herself. Awesome, that's great. But now we're getting a fine motor. So the child is moving forward in their motor function continuum. And then eventually they start to talk. Oh, that's wonderful. But if the child never gets a chance to move, then they cannot cross midline, and this motor function continuum can't kick in, right? What do our kids do these days?
You're right.
Right? So I tell parents and tell grandparents, don't buy them that stuff for Christmas, for birthdays. Get them out, get them a hula hoop, take them out, go on experiences. Because the midline crossover, you probably know this midline, we have 3 of them. We got this one, so left and right. We've got this one here at the waist, north and south. And then we have one that goes front and back. So if the kids don't cross midline, then they're not going to be moving forward. So they have to get up and move. And so if you've ever seen this with some kids, my kid would not be able to cross midline. He'd have to hand it off and go over here. This was just too scary until I do hand over hand. And now he can do that. But you got to build that neural pathway out of the confusion of just that bunch of jumble.
And why did you say that was important for them to cross the midline? Why?
Okay, so let's look right here. If we want them to be able to do well in the classroom for oral motor, but they're stalled out on gross motor and they haven't gotten to fine motor. Well, they're not going to be able to do the tactile things in the classroom: scissors, pencils, tying your shoes, all those beading kind of things, anything that uses the fingertips, right? And so crossing midline fits into how a child learns. A child learns as long as they can keep moving. That's why, right? And so this is my house. Look at the bottom. Not so much now, but in the early days, I've been at this game now for 12 years. My kid's almost 14. So anything that makes the child's core function, anything that's kind of wobbly. We don't have chairs. We had balls. We still have balls. And he has to sit on that. So he's constantly working on his Pilates, constantly working on his core. For the midline crossover, he's left-handed. So I'm going to always turn his whatever he's sitting in. I'm going to put his stuff over on this side. So he has to cross midline to get anything. Even now, I'm constantly, purposefully, anytime I can, putting him in a physical situation where he has to cross midline. This is bilateral here, up and down, top and bottom, right?
And is this daily? These are daily exercises? Constantly. And this is what OTs are doing all the time. And if you're in the classroom or PE, I think PE teachers know about this too. But if the teachers in the classroom or in the sensory room want to do some kind of a break, or, you know, that pat your head and rub your tummy at the same time, you try to do that, that's a bilateral. So that helps, again, we're moving toward gross motor into fine motor into oral motor, so that child can, where our primitive reflexes are getting integrated into more sophisticated reflexes. Oh, that's beautiful. Wow. And
this feeds phonetic awareness, okay? Yeah. All right, so here's some of the interventions that we're doing. Now, this may be outside the scope of some families. We've got decent insurance, and he's also Medicaid. Not that I had planned on that, but we've also been at this a long time. But I have one kid. So if I had 4 kids and I was working 3 jobs, then that might be a different story, and John wouldn't be such a lucky kid. This is what we're doing at a non-clinical OT right now. So this is interactive metronome, fast forward, astronaut trading, anything that gets that kid into 3-dimensional movement. And this one here on the right-hand side with the partners, they take a ball over and the next pair go under. And so they're passing this forward and back. And all of these kinds of things, there's a Balviz game that teachers can play when the kids need to take a break. Here with all of this COVID-19 canvas stuff that everybody's been through, when my kid needs to take a break, baby, you're on your bike, out, go. You're not taking a break on this. This is too much of the same. You need to get out and move, right? And then that'll reset the body, reset the brain to be able to sit quietly and try again and start over. So interactive metronome, mini trampolines, a balance board. You can get a mini trampoline for about, well, I did it when I bought mine at Amazon. It was not that, less than $50. I had 3 of them in the house. I'm down to 1 now. Kids can bounce on that. If kids want to watch a TV or watch a screen, but they're bouncing on a trampoline at the same time, our doctors would say that would help integrate the visual system, to help them, the dendrites come together in a better way, to help the data transfer, the flow of the traffic. So we're working on executive functioning, the visual integration, and how a child learns is also measured with visual learning layers. And that's a vision therapy thing. And sometimes a good OT will understand a visual integration and visual ages, but you can actually clock the kid at what visual age they are. Bilateral motor, that's something on crossing midline. This midline is doing something than this one. So if I was snapping my fingers and trying to do this, that's bilateral, but it's harder than you think, right?
Right.
Okay. And working memory, we talked about that. Dyslexia, I got a problem with the written word, the spoken, well, the written word and the spoken word are stored in different parts of the brain. Dyslexia, I got a problem processing this written stuff. Dysgraphia, I'll show you here later on when we get into the curriculums, but here's my kid's version of dysgraphia. And it's not pretty, but we keep working on it.
Can you explain what dysgraphia is?
Yes, dysgraphia means my handwriting is terrible.
Okay.
I've got some examples to show you here pretty soon. Am I talking too fast?
No, you're great.
Okay, awesome. Dyscalculia is I got a problem with math. The
Okay.
parts of my brain where math and numbers are stored, time awareness, money awareness, it's just not what is typical. We have non-typical wiring. So my relationship, our kids' relationship with time and money, being on time to task completion, ADHD fits into here if you're lucky. If you're autism spectrum and you got all these other things, then they call it comorbid when you got more than one thing you're trying to wrestle with. So these are challenges, and these are OT ARD words here, but there's no reason that the parents couldn't learn this stuff, right?
Right.
Okay. So anyway, this is non-clinical OT, but the OTs in your world would know about this stuff. They may not have the money for it with the ISD, but we continue with these and have it let up. Okay, so visual learning is an important thing. So if the eyes aren't integrated for the learners, then they'll have the other senses up here in the yellow model there. The other senses will kick in and they'll compensate, to work harder because the eyes aren't integrated the way they need to be. But these are examples. I'm going to show you some examples of what vision therapy can look like, has looked like for my son. And if the kids don't get that, then other senses will compensate. The eye gate does bring in 80 to 90% of information to the brain in the visual world. So if your eyes cannot focus, if they don't team or they don't jump together, saccadic jumping, if they, so when you stand and you do the Snellen test, nothing's moving, right? I'm standing still, it's not moving, I'm not moving, and I'm reading AEMPSPQ. Awesome, you can see, move that around. Let me move around, let my eyes move around, make everything moving, and now that Snelling test isn't a true representation of our learner's eye age and the ability of the eyes to look down, look up, look down, refocus, come back, startle effect, look up, what happened, what's going on, oh, back to my knitting, back to my work, Okay, so here's what vision therapy looks like, and some links to free information for parents or anybody.
I have a quick question. Did you say that this is going to be available on Canvas? How will we have access to this presentation?
All of our presentations go into some tool, and I chose Dropbox. So all of these are PDFs in the Dropbox folder that's hooked to this meeting, hooked to my world, to you all. And there should be a way to go in and get the links because they had us put everything in a Dropbox.
Okay.
You also will have, there's a picture in here that tells all about my website and all the extra tools and all the modalities that I have. But it should be through your system. I'm very impressed with New Caney's organization of all of this. Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so another segment of the vision therapy. So as far as assessing the dysgraphia, you were asking about dysgraphia. So here's what dysgraphia might look like, as well as we'll get to this stuff over here in a jiffy. We do a list every day. So here's my version of the list, the first picture you're looking at. Then here's his version of it, right? Downhill. If your kids you're working with, they're going, downhill, or they're writing letters on top of each other. Their awareness and motor planning for space is gummed up. John, my kid, will start to write words. Pretty soon he's just using the right-hand side of the paper. He's got to start on the over on this side of the paper, John, but no, he's like, just everything is, so you might see that. The relationship with cursive, that's another big adventure. We can't print well, right? But he'll sometimes pretend and do some cursive, so there we go. And now it's keyboarding, and then we're trying to also work on that midline crossover, that motor function to touch type, not just hunt and peck. Okay, so here's some other outputs, some number lines, how we work through it all. We can talk more about this as much as you wish. Let's talk about the language and communication. So, Mr. Bean, you know, do you know this guy?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So you've seen his movies or his TV shows, right? And he never says a word. He might mumble, right? But he carries the whole movie. You know what he's talking about. You know what he's trying to do in his TV show. And that's because his joint attention is wanting to communicate, is nonverbal, and it's there. So when we're talking about communication with our kids, it doesn't have to always be perfect words and perfect sentences. It could be body language, it could be signing, it could be text, picture exchange, onomatopoeia, facial expressions, silliness. You know, 80% of how we communicate is body language. And I'm trying to do that with you here in three-dimensional space, but we are missing something, right? We know that, because it would be how we would physically interact with each other. So anyway, the intention to communicate with our kids is what is really the most important. So receptive language, I got your words, teacher. I got them here. Uh-oh, now you want me to do something with them. Uh-oh. Auditory processing. You asked me a question. What is a teacher looking for? And then eventually I'll try to get a nice expressive sentence back out to you, if I can. If I cannot, like my kid, so I told the school in elementary, if you have no other way to assess John, if he doesn't give you the nice sentences you're looking for, and he can't, if he can't give you those nice written sentences that you're looking for, and he can't, then you know what? Default to behavior. Ask him some not open-ended questions. Don't ask him, so John, what would you like to do today? Too many words. So what color shirt do you want to wear today? Well, in the beginning, it was like, okay, green or blue? Green, blue. And then as he became more sophisticated in his neural pathways, green, blue, pink, or add a third color, add a third choice. Awesome, okay? That working memory is elongated. And then eventually we would work into, John, go pick out your own clothes, which we are at now. And that's a progression of the neural pathways and a progression of the kid's ability to cope in life. But sometimes you always have to meet them where they are. And that's the maddening thing for parents. And the maddening thing sometimes for the classroom is that where the kids are out of sync with their peers. So how do we work on that? And how did that happen? And is it the kid's fault? No, it's not the kid's fault. Okay, so we're back to that continuum you'd asked about earlier, that gross motor feeding fine motor, which feeds oral motor. And so if a kid can't do this, we were stalled out. So we did a whole long process, an intervention with he and I, and a ball and jumping and stemming, and so that he could move past, he could get a 2-footed launch. Usually the pediatricians say that's like age 3, age 4, and he was 7 or 8 before we got into that. Music in the brain. So here's the link at the bottom is a link to a book that I found that was the best so far that I have found on integrating music into learning. And so if I need to get their attention and nothing else works, I'm going to sing to John or to someone else. All of a sudden, that little brain that's over here wandering around is going to go bloop, because the music turns the brain on and it's drawn to the music. The brain is also drawn to motion. So I tell teachers, if you're standing still like this up at the blackboard and you wonder why your kids aren't watching you, you wonder why they're turning around and looking at everything that's moving in the back or down the hallway outside the door, well, you've got to move around because the brain is going to be drawn to movement. And the brain's going to be drawn to singing, no matter what. Who cares about what melody it is? It's just song. And here's some, these are all research-based references for music integrating into the brain and education. So a little bit about, let me see how much time. Oh man, we're down to 8 minutes. Shoot. Okay, I'm gonna, forgive me here. I want to get into this curriculum. So here's what quantum reflex integration looks like. Vagus nervous system, the child model of methylation, how important the immune system is. And this is all in the notes and even more in the appendix. And I'll talk with you more at another time, anytime you wish. how are what we've done, how we've integrated midline crossover, how we've integrated motor planning into John's social emotional learning, and how he's proved himself, but it's been because he's chosen to. Now let's get into the meat of the curriculum. So OG based, right? We always want it to be Ota Gillingham based because, and a lot of people are selling a lot of interventions. And so right now I'm paying money for a few, but there's some I wouldn't use, and they need to be OG based for your families. Okay, so LLI was the first reading intervention that our district offered John, and I found it to be inefficient, ineffective for him. We moved on. I studied NIHouse. So this was my job because of time of day. There wasn't enough time to trot him in and out of NIHouse, plus to find a therapist, plus we weren't getting that kind of support because the school district was still hung up on LLI, which was not any good. All right, so I take this two classes of scientific spelling, and then we sit down, and that's a picture there of us doing it side by side. It's laborious, but you've got to go back and meet them where they are. And we would spend 15, 20 minutes a day, and I have all the paperwork from that. And we worked through the food chain on how they said to do it. Phonetic awareness, phonemes, graphenes, and all that. And then I realized, yikes, he's actually, this is further ahead. I found something that went back even more basic, and that was explicit instruction. And that's this whole pile of stuff. That was Family Literacy Network, and then some, and these are exercises that this is based on the same kind of research that the NIHouse is based on. It just is more purposeful. Every little tiny step. And so how do you climb the mountain? You don't go up the face fast. Not for my kid, not for some learners. You have to take little steps around the switchback, and you're going to go around the mountain. You're going to do something consistently every day. You're going to help them with their self-esteem and their reading. And soon, eventually, someday, we'll get to the top of being able to read mountain. Now, we'll still have to work on the can you retell the story mountain? We're there. But anyway, so I also then fast forward is another intervention we're using. It's expensive, usually needs an occupational therapy oversight. Some people say good, some people say bad about it. I'm still spending money for it. I see benefit to John, but it is a more expensive one for the families. Okay, so some pictures. How might this look? How might reading for comprehension look if we were looking to the future or in this interim period? Our kids have opportunity to use written language and social emotional and reading for comprehension in many ways if we back up our prompts, right? I make him responsible for filling out the receipt when we go to eat. I got him a debit card, a $5 debit card thing. Make him responsible for that. We check into therapies. He's going to be writing it down. He's going to be responsible. He knows how to handle a card. We're making lousy headway with nickels and dimes and pennies, but we're getting the deal with the debit card. So I'm not sure what all that means, but we're wrestling with the number thing too. So we got dyscalculia on top of everything. My kid's got every learning inefficiency that there is. So I just have to be endlessly curious. But he's in charge of navigation, right? Whether it's my phone or whether it's the Garmin. He's paying attention to this top picture. I'm sorry, I'm poking my finger in your face. Forgive me for that. I'm so sorry. He has a banking account, and he went from disinterested when it was for brother to, I said, John, would you like to have a bank account? And he goes, yeah. And he was into it there at the table. So it became something that was about his centering, right? And when he signs himself up, you can tell which one is John Fisher on that whiteboard with a karate thing. But there's no way to go but straight through the tunnel. No way to go but practice. So as far as explicit instruction goes, just a quick version of it, and we have spent at least 120 of their classroom hours and much more counting what John and I have done. We go back to that original example of the phoneme and grapheme. One grapheme, two phonemes. So what he would do with this curriculum is starting off, he would trace and he would do it to mastery. And he couldn't get sloppy. He's got to take that first phoneme all the way to the dot, make the pivot, and change direction. And we would work on that for all the phonemes, graphenes, and then we would go up to the next step just a little bit. We needed master down here, right? So we would add new content for stretching, but we always had to work toward mastery as we would rebuild everything. Right, so this is what some of our classroom hours have looked like at the house, in the car, with the listening therapy, doing word decoding, breaking the words down, putting them together again, spelling, reading, what does the story say, building a little RAT and then making a rat, and I would mix them up. It wasn't flashcards, you know, like here's a word is a word chunk, not a word chunk. Because you just run out of the ability to master what if the words get more complicated. The word chunking is you're gonna lose out on that. You have to be able to break it down. Most reliable sounds, unfair words. This is vocabulary that comes out of Night House as well as explicit instruction. Right? So it's not hard. It just takes consistency. That's the thing. All right, and here's some research on it that says 60 to 80 hours theoretically is going to help a kid. My kid must be less neurally typical because we're at 120 and we're a long way from graduating per se. But at least we know what we need to do. And explicit instruction is just simply we leave nothing to chance on it. So here's what it looks like. We keep at it with 2 hours. And we do have some app delivered things, but this is not really app delivered stuff. This is one-on-one or one-on small group things. So here's some more of some of the tools that we've used. We use our list. I'm always talking about for parents to understand codependency. I talked to you already about the mountain, you know, how you can get to the top, but it's not going to be, you're not going to be doing the rock wall. It's going to be a different approach to it. Then we can talk about dyslexia handbooks. We can talk about, so there's a lot of links. I'm just gonna, because we're down to 1 minute, I want to just show you what's here, and I would talk with you later, and I would stay past into the break if you wanted. So yes, here's links. Here's links to more about LLI. Here's some links to some people that had told me they set up some, at the phonetic awareness level, they did these links and this channel themselves. And it's at the very early level, but there you go. You can go check out what they're doing. I don't know that it's OG based because it's 2 teachers, but it's all very application based on OG. Someone has also told me, ask them what color is addition, ask them what color is music, what color is language arts. Can you tell me about that? What do you see? You know, that's for kids with more expressive language, right? And then I've played with Erlen filters. You know, I mean, there's all those color variations and all the compounded colors. I've not found it to be useful to us, but I know some kids that it has helped. So here's some interventions that I have listed that would probably be OG based good enough for us. We haven't gotten to them yet. It's always good to have, you know, some things in your pocket to work toward. The mindfulness goes back to what we were talking about, that introception. Is for the child to be at peace enough with their own thoughts, their feelings, their surrounding circumstances. Their biggest nervous system is calm enough so that they can be able to listen to phonemes and graphenes. If their vagus nervous system and their sensory integration is vibrating so badly and they are either so hungry or so frustrated or so sad or so, all of those emotions that they cannot be at peace to learn, and you don't have joint attention, you know how much learning is going to happen? Nothing. So to be in the present moment with our kids is really huge. Have I lost you?
I'm here. I'm
Oh,
listening.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to stop. It goes on, but I'm officially supposed to stop now. There's a lot of information on there about ARDS, and parents can use. I freely give out the PowerPoint, the PDFs of all the workshops. You can go to the website. Let me show you this here really fast, because I forgot to do this. So we go back to positive consequences for the child. I should have done that with you with the first session, but we can look at, if we do this right, for our kids, they can have the positive consequences, confidence, pride, joy, risk-taking. They can have a sense of belonging. They can be self-respected, and they can have respect from others. Self-control, resilience, have poise, have self-esteem, and understand natural consequences of life and unintended consequences of life. This is the goal that we want to have for our kids. Okay. So anyway, there's some of that stuff. This is where I've presented some of the blogs. I'm working on podcasts, audio podcasts. This, if you want to do a quick screen print, this is where everything is referenced from here. You start at that website and click away, where we got a lot of learning projects in different directions. We look for gaps. We look for what needs to be created, and we work on that. So.
Thank you. That was all so wonderful. I mean, gold mine. Thank you for that.
My pleasure. Thank you for your time. Thank you for choosing this. Some of the other sessions we get into, I've got 3 more topics, right? And I'll be glad to talk with you any other time. We do a newsletter. We have a first responders project. We've got lots of other projects for siblings too. So anyway, thank you, Martha. I enjoyed our time together.
Thank you. I'll be looking for more information. Thank you, Gal.
Yes, bye-bye.
Thanks. Have a good one.
You too.
Thanks.
Oh, hi, everybody. Are you guys still there? I ended the session too soon. Are you guys still there?
I'm here for the next session.
Okay, awesome. So you guys are all 15 minutes early.
Yeah, I'm early.
Awesome, okay. That's wonderful. Super. I just finished one on phonetic awareness. I'll see, I need to stop the recording. You want to stop the recording? Yes.